You're listening to the Mother to Baby podcast, medications and more during pregnancy and breastfeeding. Ask the experts with your host, genetic counselor and mom of four, Chris Stallman.
This episode contains evidence-based information that's current as of the day recorded and may change as more data becomes available. To get the very latest information about this topic or other topics in pregnancy and breastfeeding, please contact a mother-to-baby specialist at 866-626-6847, by text at 855-999-3525, or through our website at MotherToBaby.org. Welcome to another episode of the Mother to Baby podcast. My name is Chris Stallman, and I'm a genetic counselor, a mom of four, and a teratogen information specialist. So what I do is I talk to people, patients, family members, healthcare providers about exposures that can happen before pregnancy, during pregnancy, while breastfeeding, and in cases of adoption. And an exposure can be anything. So it could be a vaccine, it could be a chemical at your job, or it could be a vitamin or supplement that you take. Today, we're going to be talking about folic acid and some of the myths surrounding it. Our guest today is here to talk with us about this topic. Dr. Shannon M. Clark is a double board-certified professor in obstetrics and gynecology and maternal fetal medicine at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas. Many of us know her as @BabiesAfter35 on social media. She is a social media health educator with thousands of followers on Instagram, TikTok, and other platforms. Dr. Clark joined the podcast previously for episode 51 about high-risk pregnancy and for episode 65 about pregnancy after age 35. We are delighted and very lucky to have her back again. Dr. Clark, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So today, as I mentioned, we're talking about folic acid. And, as people who talk with folks going through or planning to go through pregnancy, we like to talk about folic acid all year long because it's really important. Today, we're going to focus on it a little bit more because of Folic Acid Awareness Week, which happens every September. So how about we start with the basics? Dr. Clark, what is folic acid?
All right, well, why don't we start with what is folate? Because that's the kind of the bottom of the pyramid here. What is folate? So we know that folate is a water-soluble vitamin B9 that occurs naturally in foods. If you think about green leafy vegetables, probably the most when you think about folate. And that's also referred to as both natural food folate or dietary folate. But on social media and even in healthcare, both the terms folic acid are very often used interchangeably, even though they're different. So folate is the general term used to describe all the different types of vitamin B9, whether they be naturally occurring or during the metabolic process or synthetic, like folic acid. Folic acid is also a B vitamin, but it is a synthetic oxidized form of vitamin B9 that's used in multivitamins, prenatal vitamins, or like a single supplement like just a bottle of folic acid. And it's also found in fortified foods. But folic acid is what we consider the core molecule in all folates, but is not itself present in natural food. It does become more biologically active after it's metabolically reduced in the liver. It's also more stable than natural food folate. And if you add it to food, like with fortification, it's not destroyed during the cooking process or if you heat it with baking or any other forms of when you cook. So when you consider all the different types of folate that are available, for example, when you're looking for prenatal vitamins supplementation or just a prenatal vitamin in general, you will see all different types of folate. The nutrition label may say folate and then clarify in parentheses what type of folate. There can be folinic acid, folic acid, all different types of methylfolate, and then there are like 5-MTHF or levomefolic acid or metafolin. So there's a bunch of different types of methylfolate or methylated folate, but there's one folic acid. And folic acid is the important form of folate when considering those who are trying to conceive and in pregnancy.
So Dr. Clark, why is folic acid important?
Folic acid specifically is important because it is the only form of folate found in prenatal vitamins and in supplementation that has been proven in numerous studies, including randomized controlled trials, to help prevent neural tube defects in the fetus. And that includes more commonly known, or what most people would know as a neural tube defect, as being anencephaly, which would be where a baby is born without brain. There may be a brain stem, but there's no cerebral cortex, or right or left hemispheres of the brain. And then also spina bifida, which could be, quote unquote, a hole in the spine, if you will. And then because that's the only form of folate that has been found in RCTs and other studies to help prevent neural tube defects, that is the form of folate that we know and we have evidence that definitely has reduced the incidence of neural tube defects in the fetus, including the lethal ones like anencephaly. And those aren't the only two types of neural tube defects. There's many others that are also lethal, but those are the ones that are the most common. So when you're looking for either a prenatal vitamin or a single supplement, it's very important that on that nutrition and supplements facts label that's on the back of the bottle, that it may say folate or even dietary folate, but in parentheses it needs to say folic acid specifically and explicitly. And that will be followed by the amount of folic acid in micrograms. Most of the prenatal vitamins will have anywhere between 400 and 800 micrograms of folic acid. Or it may say 360 micrograms is dietary folate equivalent. So either way, it needs to say folic acid. And even if it says 360, that's still fine. But again, you will typically see on these supplements anywhere in prenatal vitamins, anywhere between 400 and 800 micrograms.
I love that reminder. So looking for the exact term, as you said, folic acid on the label, looking to see how much is in there. Excellent. At what point is folic acid important? Now, it sounds like it's important, in a lot of different time periods, but is there one or two time periods that are the most critical, when it's the most important?
Yeah, so it's really important during the trying to conceive period, 1 to 3 months prior to conception, if you will, in that trying to conceive period, and also through the first trimester. And that's because that's when the neural tube is formed by 5 to 6 weeks after that last menstrual period. So because most people don't even know they're pregnant at 5 to 6 weeks after the last menstrual period, having it on board before conception is ideal. So you may have heard, many of you may have heard, that it's recommended that anyone capable of pregnancy should be taking at least 400 micrograms of folic acid a day. And that's because studies have shown that most reproductive age individuals do not consume enough dietary folate that is needed for the closure of that fetal neural tube. And also, a lot of unplanned pregnancies occur. So if you're taking it, at least 400 micrograms daily, if you're of reproductive age and capable of pregnancy, or if you're trying to conceive, taking it at least 1 to 3 months prior to conception is ideal. And then continuing it through that first trimester. That's when we know the neural tube is closed and we've had the folic acid on board. Again, that's the only form of folate found in prenatal vitamins and supplements that has been proven to help prevent neural tube defects in the fetus. And I have a lot of patients or people say, well, what if I'm eating enough dietary folate? Well, as long as you are, and you account for the fact that if you're cooking the leafy green vegetables and you got to account for some loss in the heating process, then you may not need it. But to be on the safe side, I would still recommend that everybody do it, because you simply don't know. And it's since we have the studies and that have time and time again proven that folic acid helps prevent neural tube defects, and it is a potentially preventable birth defect. We don't have a lot of other studies that we say no, that if you take this simple supplement, it'll prevent a heart defect. If we knew that, that would be awesome. Just think about all the congenital heart defects that we have in fetuses. But we know this works. Now, it doesn't prevent 100% of neural tube defects, clearly. Even if people are taking it, there are some neural tube defects that are folate resistant, but that's in the minority. And studies have proven that the incidence of neural tube defects has decreased since we've implemented folic acid fortification of foods. So it's just important to just go ahead and take that 400 micrograms of folic acid supplementation if you're of reproductive age, or at least 1 to 3 months in the trying to conceive period, and then definitely through that first trimester.
And I love that you mentioned that, this is something that can reduce that risk. And you're so right. So often we really don't have that much control over some of the factors, but you're right. This is one where we can definitely have a little bit more.
Yeah.
Dr. Clark, I know you're very vocal on social media, particularly when it comes to debunking myths about pregnancy-related topics. Can you give us some examples of the craziest or most interesting misinformation you've come across out there in social media about folic acid?
So I've heard that folic acid causes everything under the sun, but there's two things that I hear that really actually bother me, and that's when people on social media try to say that folic acid causes postpartum depression, or that it caused neurodevelopmental disorders in the offspring, like autism spectrum disorder. That is simply not true. There is absolutely no evidence that has linked or even associated the consumption of folic acid and postpartum depression or neurodevelopmental disorders in the offspring. In fact, there are some studies that show the opposite. Okay? So, unfortunately, there are some very big social media accounts with a lot more followers than me that tell people this, and they believe it. And it's very unfortunate, because these people will avoid folic acid because these accounts have a lot of followers, and they think that gives them credibility. And I just want to make sure people know the number of followers someone has does not make them credible, and makes them an entertainer. Okay, if they don't have the credentials to be talking about something like neural tube defects in the fetus, just because they had a lot more followers doesn't mean they're credible. And in fact, I will even argue that they're using the topic of pregnancy and targeting those pregnant individuals, which are a vulnerable population to begin with, because they just want to do what's right, in order to grow their accounts even more, or sell what's in their link in bio, which often links back to some expensive supplement with methylated folate instead of folic acid. So there's always something in it for them, and we just have to be cautious.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate, folks like yourself coming onto our podcast and, using your own social media to be out there and directly combating with the actual education, like you said, with the data, with the information, with what the studies have shown us, the science piece of it. And I know that can get kind of jumbled and a little bit scary, but thank you. And thank you to everyone who is out there trying to get the actual information that we know is true from studies out to the population. Because you're right, it's confusing and it's scary.
All roads lead back to that link in bio. If they are selling some kind of supplement in their link in bio, or selling you a way to test for MTHFR gene variants, they are doing it for profit, not because it's science-based. It is crucial, and those who are trying to conceive and in pregnancy, that folic acid is what is taken as a supplement, because it is proven and we know it works. It's not worth it to gamble and cross your fingers and hope that methylated folate works, because the outcome could be potentially catastrophic. Okay? When we have something that we know that works, that's what we should lean on, because there's no evidence that it's harmful. And the alternative is potentially having a fetus with a lethal congenital defect, which I'm sure if we can prevent that, most people would want to do that.
Absolutely. So much excellent information and wonderful insights. Dr. Clark, thank you so much for coming back to the show, and we hope to have you on again in the future. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Mother to Baby podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that way you never miss a new episode, and you can go back and listen or re-listen to some of those older episodes as well. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, or however you like to listen to podcasts. And if you want to be on the podcast, or if you have an idea for the show, we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to email us at contact@mothertobaby.org. And Mother to Baby is here to answer your questions about exposures before and during pregnancy, while breastfeeding, or if you have questions about exposures and adoption. You can reach us by phone at 866-626-6847. By text at 855-999-3525, You can visit us on our website, MotherToBaby.org, and there you can chat with an information specialist. You can look at our many blogs, information pages, our hundreds of fact sheets that are available free in English and in Spanish. And you can also listen to our podcast or find out how you can participate in our pregnancy studies. If you would like to support the Mother to Baby podcast, as well as all of the ways we get critical pregnancy and breastfeeding health information to you at home, we have a new way to do just that. Encircle is our new monthly giving society that helps ensure we can continue to provide our services at no cost. Join the community today and encircle parents and babies in health. Members will be recognized on the podcast and website. Visit mothertobaby.org/donate today. Until next time, remember, Mother to Baby is here for you. Take care.
Mother to Baby is a service of the nonprofit organization of Teratology Information Specialists and supported by the Health Resources and Service Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It's made possible through generous donations from listeners like you. To learn more about Mother to Baby, please visit mothertobaby.org.